Okay, so now we have a function that has a square root in it. Now we can look at the picture of this, and that's going to be helpful to do. So we know it's a square root curve, and it's going to be shifted 4 units to the right. So here we are at 4, and the curve is going to do something like, here's the point, and going off this way. Okay? Now, let's think about what that means. It means that there is already a restriction in place. For x has to be greater than or equal to 4. You can find that by looking at the original function. But you'll also notice y is not all the real numbers. Y is greater than or equal to 0. Okay? So in the past, we had some other types of things going on that we were restricting. But it's important to note that not only is x greater than or equal to 4 in this case, but the y is also greater than or equal to 0. Okay? Now that'll help us when we go to do the inverse. All right. So for the inverse, y equals the square root of x minus 4. And so now we're going to switch. X is equal to the square root of y minus 4. So we want to solve for y, square both sides. This time we're squaring both sides. So we don't need a plus or minus. That is only when you're doing the square root of both sides. So, that's fine. Now we add the 4, and we get something like x squared plus 4 equals y. We know what this looks like. It's a parabola, right? And it's up 4 units. So I'm going to draw it up here. And it's going to be a parabola looking like this. Okay, but we have a problem because that is not a reflection of the original function about the diagonal line. See here on the original, I just have like half a parabola. But on the inverse that I just drew, it's like you have both halves, right? So we have to restrict it so that we only have half of it. We got to take half of that parabola out. Well, which half? Remember that it has to reflect about that diagonal line, the dotted line I drew in here. So it's going to be this half that we want. This half that we want. Okay? So that's what it looks like with a picture. Now, what does that mean? If I want this half, because that's going to match up, like if I fold on the dotted line, the inverse is going to match with the original function. What does it mean for the restriction? It means that x is greater than 0. Okay, so x is greater than or equal to, 0. Okay, so let's write the inverse. F inverse of x is x squared plus 4. But we're going to have to put a restriction in that says x is greater than or equal to 0. That's one way to look at it. Look at the picture and you can see, well, I can't have the whole parabola. I can only have half of it to represent the inverse. The other way you can look at it is with what we stated right here. If in the original function, so this was f of x is greater than or equal to 4 and y is greater than or equal to 0, well then in the inverse, you're switching the x and y, right? So y is greater than or equal to 4 and x is greater than or equal to 0. We only need the restriction on the domain, okay? And yeah, the outputs are all going to be greater than or equal to 4 because we're taking a positive number and adding it to 4. So this then is the inverse right there.